Hello and welcome back on the New Horizons stage here on Campus Party Digital Edition, the Netherlands. We are here today with Rebecca Diaz, previously an instructor in dancing in the physical world, but thanks to COVID, we have seen different things now in the virtual world. So have a big applause for Rebecca.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Nick, for having me here, and to all those tuning in. As Nick mentioned, my name is Rebecca Diaz, and I'm the Chief Strategist of Dance Virtual. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you a little bit about Dance Virtual, which is a venture that Jorge Ortiz and I took to teach people how to partner dance in virtual reality. So we're going to go through a little bit about why and how we did it. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you all guys to stand up and do our first lesson with me. So our CEO, he's not here with us today. We met about 4 years ago, and he invited me to do some motion capture. And I agreed. The rest is history. So before we talk about why it works, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we did it. So when we started this years ago, we had no idea how important social distancing would be today. In Austin, Texas, I'm really feeling the impacts of that, especially now. Why not just take dance lessons in person, and why not just watch a YouTube video? Well, as somebody who learned from books, and as somebody who learned from DVDs, and as somebody who learned from coaches and world champions, it was really evident to me that doing everything in virtual reality was actually what I had fantasized about as a student, because you would be able to pause, rewind, slow-mo, walk around so you can see every transition, and you just don't get that experience when you're on YouTube. And also, when you're training with world-class champions, about 2 hours of a session with those guys is about what a headset costs. So it really evened out for me. So the reason it works is because we were, as it says on my slide here, we did exactly what we did in the studio, and we put that in virtual reality. On the slide here, you can see our studio classroom and our virtual classroom. So in our studio classroom, this is a warm-up that we did, and in our virtual classroom, you can see this is a line dance that we were trying to teach. So another benefit that we had is when I was teaching and when I was training, I got to be a part of franchise studios, and I got to be a part of independent studios. And there's a huge difference for any dancers who are tuning in. I think y'all already know this, that franchise studios are much more structured in the way they teach, and independent studios have a lot more freedom and also a lot more creativity. So as I mentioned, before we even got to start developing, we needed to make a few decisions. And the first decision that we made is that we were going to do we were going to focus on beginners. So there's a couple of reasons we wanted to focus on beginners. One, it was going to be easier, and two, the purpose of Dance Virtual was not to monopolize the student base of dance. It was really meant to be a stepping stone for people to get into the studio, people who are unsure if they wanted dancing as a hobby, people who were afraid of being vulnerable. When I first started ballroom dance, I missed my first class. I sat in my car for about 30 minutes because I was too terrified to go inside. I think Jorge's first dance experience, he was dumped at prom. And so it's hard to start a new hobby. And so also another benefit of doing this in virtual reality is that you could dance like nobody was watching. So let's go through minutes here. The video you just saw was Salsa Virtual. That was our first complete virtual reality beginner dance class. Certainly the very first salsa dance class in virtual reality. At the end of the slide, or excuse me, at the end of this presentation, when I ask all you guys to get up, we will be doing just a little bit of dance. So when we decided to do it also for beginners, we knew that we, the moves that you see here, this is Jorge dancing with an avatar. The moves that you see here, that is as complicated as it gets. So moving on. So how does it work? It worked with hours and hours and hours of motion capture. And then times all those hours by 3, and you get all the work that we did afterwards by cleaning it up. So we didn't always have these fantastic suits that you see Jorge and I in. We have the fancier motion capture suits with all of these neurons, maybe about even 10 per hand, just to get every single finger movement for our head, shoulders, hips, everything. But when we first started, we started with swim caps on our head and brightly colored shirts over, maybe a dark long sleeve shirt. I remember I had bright blue tights, and it looked ridiculous. We have a photo of that. I didn't post it here, but you can go to our website, dancevirtual.com, and you can check it out there along with some other silly stuff. So motion capture was difficult in the beginning. It's not something that either Jorge or I specialized in, so it was something that we had to research, and our developing went on from there. So before we could even start, it felt like motion capture days had a step 0, like all the stuff that we had to do before we even got started. We could lose so many hours because we didn't charge our microphones or our batteries or maybe our laptops, or even if it was raining that day, we weren't able to take any video because you could even hear it through our recording. So we made plenty of mistakes. Everything that we did, we moved on and we learned. And this next slide kind of highlights some of our bloopers. If you want to see this video with audio, you can go to our YouTube page. We would sometimes we would get our recordings sometimes in 20 minutes, or sometimes we would take 5 to 6 hours in the studio. We decided that it was going to be best and that we could get like the most authentic feel for our lessons if we recorded the audio and the motion capture at the same time. The microphone in this example is square on my forehead. So everything down to the clothes we're wearing was extremely specific. Another kind of unexpected thing was that I became pregnant in the middle of our developing. So the picture here is me 8.5 months pregnant doing our motion capture, doing our audio. Fun stuff. So when we were done doing all the motion capture, we put it into Access Neuron. Well, it actually live recorded into there. And then we had to do our first set of cleaning. So what we had to do is, if you can see in the picture here, that yellow circle, there's some different shades. There's some light gray, there's some black, and that's how we could control what foot you were on. Sometimes we had some really silly recordings. We would watch it first, and then if we were able to get it past this phase of cleaning, we knew the recording was definitely worth keeping, because then we would next put it into Blender for a deep clean. So Blender is a very powerful tool, and keyframe by keyframe, we could edit the joints. Sometimes when we were in our motion capture suits, we would lose the calibration of something, and so as we're dancing, maybe our hands just started kind of switching a little bit. And in order to fix that, we would just put it here. So the bottom of the screen, you see all those white dots? We were sorting through that in order to make it look clean. It also was really useful for us because especially as somebody who had trained to I know a reasonable range of motion, especially for beginners, we wanted to give them a very good visual example of what to do, because that was the part of how we teach. So after we were done scrubbing in Access Neuron, and after we were done scrubbing in Blender, we would put it into Unity. Unity is my preferred game engine for virtual reality. There are a few others. And when we started, I didn't know anything about Unity. I was not trained as a computer scientist. I was trained as a dancer. So I was very fortunate that Jorge was very patient with me and teaching me all of this stuff, or at least how to access what to learn in order to learn this stuff. I just started scratching the surface of coding, and it's just feels so light years away from doing background work and in the studio. So this is what we're looking at here. This is a screenshot of Salsa Virtual. The mirror, shout out to Jorge, was his little coding baby. He made that work. We were very impressed, especially with the time. And then we had, what you're seeing here is you're seeing two teachers, and then you as the avatar, the student, is behind. You see the hands are a little funny. It's because we had to put the controllers down to get the screenshot. So, or the hands of the student look a little funny. So the Salsa Virtual, the way it's designed is we have different levels. So our first complete beginner lesson consists of about 5 levels, and you walk into a building, and on your first level, you do your first lesson. It has a few mini lessons, and that's where you learn your Salsa Basic. And your second level is where you learn your second step, which is your side steps for salsa. And then as you move up in your physical reality levels, then you move up also in difficulty. On those floors, you have little mini lessons in between. And that's where you can rewind, slow, play, pause, all the things that you see there. And they excuse me. And at the end of the lesson, we give you an avatar that you can practice with. So I really love the avatar because it helped with my social anxiety of being able to stare into at least a humanoid while you were trying to dance. You know, you can walk up to them, you bring your controllers to them, they grab your hands, and they mirror your part. You get to choose whether you get to be a leader or follower, and respectively, the avatars will do their part. So, excuse me. There is still some challenges, and we do have some skepticism. So if you have ever danced before, especially partner dance, I mentioned some things like motion capture and Blender, and also mentioned the Unity. Some of you guys tuning in may have already heard about all that. If any of you guys are dancers, your burning question may be like, how do you do your connection if you don't have the actual person? And I know that's something that, especially now, shout out to all the studios who are trying to overcome that in their virtual classes. It's not easy. We honestly still don't have the best answer. Salsa Virtual is only $20 in the Steam store right now, so we don't expect people to have like the haptic, feedback gloves. It's not practical yet. Maybe as the technology gets better, we will have a better answer for that. What we've done now is just done everything that we can with the visuals and the audio to explain what they should experience. And that just kind of reinforces the idea that when we started out, we didn't want Dance Virtual to be like your only dance experience. We did wanted you to go out, and we did wanted you to socialize, because we know that that's, or at least for me, that's the most fun part. So the result was a dance. So this is Jorge and I, And I don't want you to think that the result here is that you're going to dance like this after you do your first your first salsa virtual lesson. It's not going to happen. But what is happening here is Jorge and I made a fantastic memory. We had a lot of fun, and we were able to just use our skill. And Dance Virtual was here to give you guys like that first step. So this was fun. We were at a conference. We were dancing on top of a building in San Antonio, Texas, and we just saw the opportunity and we took it. Again, if you want to see this with the music, you can jump on our YouTube page. I obviously wanted to talk through the video, so it's silent here, but just a whole lot of fun. So before we start dancing, however, I'm going to change the slide. I think I saw some questions maybe flash by. Nick, do you think you can help me read any comments that were there?
Yeah, I do have some questions for you. So how to get started? So if I want to start with dancing lessons with my girlfriend, I have an Oculus Quest. Is that compatible already?
A Quest, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes. However, whenever we do it, we like to use the Vive just because the tracking is best for that, and something that's so like movement oriented, that's important.
So the Vive, you mean the standalone one, isn't it? Or with the cables and the computer?
That's our favorite, or that's my favorite. It's the Vive Pro. Unfortunately, as soon as we really started to have time to play with it, COVID happened, and that has separated Jorge and me for the past, since March. And us not being able to be in the same physical space, it really slowed us down, because now we can no longer just pass like a USB back and forth. We had to, and any developer probably already knows and has done this. Dance Virtual is a very, very small company. It's literally just me and Jorge. So we had to find, like, it started as nothing. Everything we did from scratch. So we had no money. We had nothing. We had to find the best way to, once COVID started, we had to find the best way to these VR files, huge, to transfer them over the cloud. To answer your question.
Yeah, almost. So you said the Vive Pro, but the Vive Pro, is it standalone or is it with cables?
Both, I believe. You can have it hooked up, or you can have it wireless. We've done both. I think if you have it wireless, you need like a bigger computer versus just like the laptop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
honestly, wouldn't quote me on that though.
I really want to start testing it. We have HD Vive in our lab. We share technology in our lab, so I'm willing to test it on there. And you said there's an app that you should download.
Yes, in Steam we already have Salsa Virtual Live. We were gearing up, and we had already started redoing some of our mocap, and in the next video, as it plays, you may notice that the audio is not at the highest quality. We got a review on our Steam page that it was a negative review, but it was probably the most helpful thing. And I like to talk about our bloopers. I like to talk about the things we did wrong, because that's where we learned the most. Yeah. We also did lots of surveys, and we were still kind of in this unfamiliar territory. We hadn't done it before. Sorry, I wanted to jump back to the audio that you hear will be not the highest quality audio, but that's one of the things that right as we were kicking back up again, then we had to slow right back down again, because we unfortunately we lost our studio space because of COVID.
Okay, yeah. So you have to do everything from home now as an instructor. And how is that going? Do you have, like, in a virtual space, you can have much more people attending than in a physical classroom, isn't it?
Yes. For Salsa Virtual, that's meant for you to do alone. We haven't explored yet having multiple users in your group class. For me, working from home has been difficult because I have a toddler now, and of course, testing or being in VR with a 2-year-old running around is not.
It's not easy, eh? Maybe the 2-year-old wants to dance with you as well on your leg.
Yeah, maybe, but it's kind of scary because I have the Windows mixed reality with me, and so that's definitely tethered, and I feel like it's more fragile than our other headsets, and so he's knocked it down a couple times. I had to do some repairs to my controllers.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of having a child, right? You have excitement every day.
Yes,
So,
and I kind of want to give a shout out to all the mamas out there who are also working from home with their kids and developers. I want you to know that you can still have a family and have your career. That's something I'm very passionate about.
yeah, well, I think that's a great topic as well. So there are a lot of people at home, and they have children around them, and maybe they have to switch the roles in between. Are there any tips and tricks on that?
So, if I was a single mother, I have no advice for you. I can't imagine what you're going through right now. I fortunately have my husband quarantining with me, and we will take 2 hours and 2 hours shifts. My toddler, of course, as soon as COVID started and he didn't go to daycare anymore, he also stopped napping.
Nice.
We switch out 2 hours and 2 hours until we get the job done or until he goes to bed.
Yeah, and what is like the biggest success you've had in teaching virtually? Is it something funny that happened, something that you work towards, something like you have a dream in this space?
Jorge always accuses me of being like he doesn't always, I should clarify that, of being a feature creeper. Like I like to add a lot of bells and whistles to everything. And I think now, especially as like, Unity keeps coming out with these like fantastic, like newer, better versions. And the VR headset's the same, I don't know if I said this before, but I meant to. Like we're pioneers, right? This is uncharted territory. People have not done this before. We are choosing to do the dirty work, and then hopefully the generations that come after us, they will learn from all of the mistakes that we have made. And sorry, my point there was to say, like, I think the best is still yet to come. I can't think of a specific moment that was the best. A lot of it was great. A lot of it was really hard work. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of hard for me to be positive during the times now, just because COVID's kind of got me down.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't know.
So you think it might be disappearing, this virtual dancing, when we are going back to the old normal?
No, I think it's gonna be better than ever by that time. Especially now that Jorge and I have more and more time to focus and strategize when we do get back into the studio. It's just gonna be like bam, 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 bam. It's gonna go by so much quicker. We're gonna have thought of everything.
Yeah.
Today we were gonna actually try to get into my living room space here and try to do some mocap, but unfortunately we had a little slip up with being exposed and the whole. It's very different the way we have to strategize and be safe now.
Yeah. Is it in your dancing together with your husband or your friend? Has there been any changes in that? Because we are in the Netherlands and we don't really have in our home situations a change.
Oh, that sounds good. Yes, the bars are closed. The dance studios, something that we used to encourage in a live dance studio.
Yeah, that's something that's starting up. We are lucky that this dancing studios have started again. We are lucky that we even have a dance group, a freestyle dance group, that is going to send in a recording of them dancing yesterday in person. So that's it's well, the lockdown is being less and less less and less strict now. It used to be that no one was able to do sports in indoor spaces. Then they opened it up for kids outdoor, and now they are, I think, opening it up for indoor sports when you can have 1.5 meter distance. And that's how they are doing dance performance now with 1.5 meter distance.
That sounds awesome. Here in Texas, the situation is still swelling. It's still not getting great. So we still have to. I'm not actually quite sure if it's mandated anymore. In the county I'm in, it's mandated that you have to wear a mask if you're in a public space.
Okay, yeah, we have to do it in public transport, but on the streets itself, we don't have to. We are, I think, lucky. We are on the end of the curve, but we are waiting for maybe a big new wave. I don't know. I hope not. But I'm really curious about it. Like, if there would be a new normal, and like the new norm, how would people be trained in sports? Do you think you can add VR as a new normal this year or upcoming year already?
So because we've been really the rate of which we work is really slowed down, I wouldn't make a promise for the next 6 months. So not in this year, but we would also need to get the content experts. So I was a content expert for dance. I can't tell you much about football. I can't tell you much about lacrosse. So we would have to get those guys, get them in our studio, hook them up, and have.
Cool. So that's also something you offer. You're helping other trainers as well to get started in giving trainings in VR.
That's the future. That's the future for us. For when we started and when we were still first learning, we just had to use what we had. But we had discussed, let's invite a yoga teacher. Let's invite the Zumba teacher to come and do her thing, because those are the people we knew. We did invite our hip hop teacher to come and do a dance, because I do ballroom dancing. I'm a little more stiff than the hip hop guys. I don't have.
Oh yeah. We have that recording is from a freestyle dance group, so they are like break dancing all the time. I'm really curious because they are editing the recording and I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm really curious how these kind of things, like if the Vive becomes better, if the software becomes better and more smoother, then I think this can be a new norm, right? You can definitely do it already now with the motion tracking. I think the first people were starting using Kinect, like to hand track and to do something with music, like hand tracking and then making music. There are some artists doing that. It's still very rare to see it. So it's still an upcoming market. But those artists, I think they are doing great. They are asked a lot by big conferences like Campus Party to show how they are performing, because we are only in the serious business stuff in our boring offices, and we do feel that technology can make an impact on sports and lifestyle, but we don't really see sport technology on our daily lives. So I'm really curious if we see this in our office next year. So like maybe a room, like a relaxing room where you can put the stuff on and you can start dancing. And at the same time, you're training your colleagues that are working from home.
Yes, that's a fantastic point. When Jorge and I were giving a presentation in Alt Space, we were able to, him and his headset over here and me and my headset over here, do a little dance. In Alt Space, we were limited because we didn't have the, full body tracking. But that's where we're headed.
That's already possible. You have the hand tracking and the head tracking.
Yeah, we do have an option for feet tracking. I wouldn't say that it's quite fine-tuned yet, but it is an option. Like sometimes in our mirror, because we track your feet, but we don't track your ankles or your knees. So Unity makes up what it thinks you're doing, and sometimes it's not correct.
Yeah. So there was a suit, like a company that created this whole suit to.
Yes, Perception Neuron.
Which one?
Perception Neuron created the motion capture suits that we bought when we graduated from our silly neon colors.
Is it called perception, you said?
Yeah, perception neuron.
Neuron, cool. And did you hear about Manus VR, like the gloves?
Oh, the haptic, that was every Monday I like to scroll through the VR news, and I remember reading about the haptic gloves, and that you could just feel. I think the example it showed was a grassy field, and then throwing your hand over the grassy field and feeling like you could.
Oh, yeah.
Every single little tingle thing, and I was just so excited. I was like, "Yes, this is what we need!" And then when
you want to feel everything while you're dancing.
Yes, that's
touch. That hand touch would make a big difference already, I think.
Yes.
I will put you in touch with them because they are a Dutch startup, the Manus PR company. And
Wow.
they're now a scale up. And they are creating that, I think, for doctors, as they are doing some trainings in becoming a doctor with these gloves.
Yes. Wow. When we first started, I think those were the first two things that we knew were going to be very challenging. Was the connection for the gloves. We were experimenting with maybe we can have some haptic feedback of our own, which is what we went with, limited to the technology that we have now, and also the wire on the headset. We were so excited. We knew we were going to get wireless. We just had to wait. I think it took about 2 years from the point that we started talking about it.
Yeah. So the motion tracking now you do it with a headband. So I saw a headband. Do you have some?
Yes.
There that
So
we can...
I can jump back to the photo here. We do it with if you we do it with these. It's almost like a skeleton of the whole thing. So we have a neuron on our head, on our back, on our shoulders, on our elbows, on our hands, on each side of our hips, our knees, and our toes. And so all of those neurons work in unison to create our humanoid and axis neuron, and then we use that to record all of our movements. We were very excited about all the finger movements that we were able to record there, because in dance sometimes we get down to those fine details.
Yeah, I think this is a good question that we should ask. So you said wireless headsets and like the motion tracking devices. If they are getting wireless, the time is there that this becomes like mainstream and a norm for training. So training motion skills, like I've never thought of this, but training motion skills like dancing and maybe other specific, very precise sports, you can probably do best with VR in the future. Like doing sports like football, it might be not relevant for, but if we have to keep the 1.5 meter, it is.
Sorry,
I think
you might be surprised. Like even just for all the teachers and for all the coaches, there are traditionally a set of exercises that you can do that for football that may not require that you have the ball with you even, or maybe virtual reality we could assign the physics to that ball and
at home you can play football at home and actually score a goal.
I'm thinking maybe more just you could do in your 5 so let's say 5 football, like meter by meter space.
The street football players, like dribbling in their 1 meter distance and then tricking the opponent and then moving forward. Like basketball, maybe basketball is a good example. It's possible already with alt space. You can lift up the ball, not bounce, and you can lift it up. And you can throw the ball.
I know a friend of mine is working on baseball, but it's more of a game than an educational tool.
And golf, I think golf will be a big thing. There's a lot of people that play it, and they invest in that sport a lot. So perhaps that's a good one. But I think it's not really affected by COVID. Golf, there's so much distance. People can stand meters, hundreds of meters away from each other, at least 5 meters away from each other. That's the safest, I think. So the sports that you do in teams, the sports that you do together in groups, yeah, I think that's, yeah, they need to be disrupted now. I think they have been waiting for a long time, and like months now already, being in quarantine to practice their sports again.
I agree. It's very sad, and dancing is sometimes, I feel like it is a team sport, because especially partner dancing, you have that other person there, and y'all together make the unit that is performing or dancing. It's whew.
Yeah, like the live concerts and all of that. We cannot go to a festival now.
Yeah, I don't want to pretend like I'm a fortune teller and that I know what the future is, but I definitely see that VR in itself will take over, especially as the learning tool. Even now that kids aren't able to go to school, they could even use this as, like, their extracurricular activity. They can't attend a physical education class. They can't do things that, when things do settle back down, it won't be life as usual. It won't be back to normal. Everybody, I think, has probably started to cope with that.
Yeah, so now I'm using a lot of VR platforms like Altspace and Roomy and Mozilla Hubs, but yes, mostly for people that don't have headsets. So to get them onboarded, it's still not easy to get people on board. But once they have tried it, it's so easy that they are saying like, okay, let's meet in VR the next time. So I use it for networking and some basic like presentation events. But I think we need something that would give like the mass market an opportunity to get into VR. Is there something that you have seen like developing over the last months, maybe from Facebook or Horizon, something like that, that you think has the potential to get the mass market on the platform for the first time? And like first time Uber, yeah, you get a reward. You get like $20 credits, and the first time Airbnb, you get €14 credits that you can share it with a friend, and you get another €5. So it's an incentive, and now there's like no incentive yet.
The incentive may be just like the state of the world, or at least here in Texas.
Yeah.
I was really impressed. I haven't used the headset myself, but with the PlayStation, when they took off, I mean, they took off. They were able to use, like, the market that they had, the gamers, and because you probably know this, like, VR has been around since like the 1960s, but we've first used it, for military training purposes, and it was probably so much more heavier and clunkier back then. It didn't even make sense to try to invite it to people's home. I think that once it's maybe like, how to express this? Like, maybe once it's, I want to say like 2 units more simple, and by that I mean once the headset itself is perhaps lighter weight, once the hand tracking is down pat, then it will probably be more common in people's home. Not everybody today, you can almost guarantee that they have a smartphone. Maybe in 5 years, maybe a decade, everybody will then have a VR headset in their home.
Yeah, I think it's different than we always thought. Like, yeah, everyone will replace their printer with a 3D printer, and it never happened, because 3D printing, like, it's the art piece itself. Like, you have to be an artist to use it on a daily basis. Otherwise, you're not going to use that. You probably use your normal printer more often. But now, this is actually a new media format. So we are communicating through our smartphones or laptops. And yeah, I think we are quite bored with it. So I think it's getting boring, and then people are finding a new source of connecting and communicating, and then they start going to the campfire session on for example, Alt Space or Rec Room. Rec Room is great. And then they start like, oh, this is so much more exciting than sitting at home behind my Zoom, behind my Zoom session. So I think we have a breakthrough now in that. I think a lot of people are open to see and experience it because they are bored of all their boring video conferencing tools. Maybe we are a bad example over here, but yeah, it's so much. I'm an event organizer that is missing the physical contact that we had. So we were able to go to a big venue that was set up on a context that made you smile, and in that context I had a lot of things to do, and you would just freedom of the feet walk there and meet an interesting person over there and have a nice something to eat and to snack over there and listen to an interesting speaker, and all of these things combined made that experience, if it was 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 2 hours or a full day, made that an experience that you won't forget. And now I think with the 2D watching streams, we don't see this as an experience, and we cannot see this as a real experience that we used to have. So trying to get that normal festival into a virtual world, I think I would be so happy to experience that same feeling that I have in that festival in the virtual world, where you can cheers with a glass, you can have a nice snack. Well, for example, the e-commerce in games, like you just buy a snack and it will be delivered via Uber Eats or whatever, and you are having your food together with a person over there. That virtual experience, I'm really looking forward to. Networking and then dancing in the end of the event, like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And maybe you have already experienced it, so I'm really curious about that. Maybe you have seen an event like Virbella is trying to create, like the virtual, like the stepping stone to the virtual world, like a second life. Maybe you've seen such an event already that we should know.
So when we the first, or one of, not even the first, but when we started presenting in VR and going to like a virtual event gets, or virtual events, I think that terminology gets thrown around. Like, this is a virtual event, and when I hear virtual, I just immediately fill in reality as the second half. So I was thinking like virtual reality event when everybody started first talking about it. When Jorge and I, we did a presentation for educators in VR, and that was held in Alt Space, and it was the first one they ever did, and they did a fantastic job. I'm sure that they also learned a lot of stuff, and while you were talking, I was feeling inspired, and I wanted to tell you, like, when you were talking about, like, for example, Uber Eats, when we do have more virtual reality spaces, it may be that instead of having a swag bag, delivered to your door, it may just be that you're given these tools in virtual reality. Next week, I'll be doing another presentation, and it will also be in 2D, and they chose to do the swag bag thing. And instead of just sending them, pieces of a circuit board that they'll put together while they're listening to a presentation, you could give that to them and they could do it in virtual reality. And that's, as you were talking, and that's what popped in my head. And I was like, yes, that's probably where we're headed. But it's something that we've learned about in Dance Virtual. We do need the transition. We can't just force people to do it until they're ready. I don't even know if the bandwidth in most places could handle all of that traffic. We were just kind of thrown into needing to go 100% online and remote so quickly.
So is it now that you have created the app, is like as you simulated the whole training of dancing, and it's a pre-recorded training and you can do it in VR with that Steam app? Is it also something you can already do live stream, or do you really need 5G connections and all of that?
Once you have the app, you don't need the internet to run it. When We did discuss Jorge and I did discuss a lot about like having a space where we could do things live. It's just we are still taking so much time fine tuning everything else that we haven't got to that phase yet.
Yeah,
we're still working towards it.
People are making webinars, and you are making VR training software. So it's a big step, and it's taking a lot more time, I think, to create such trainings.
Yes.
Isn't it? Is it? How much time does it take to create like a 25-minute course on salsa dancing?
Well, that kind of depends how motion capture goes. It could take anywhere from maybe like from start to finish, maybe a week, or maybe it could take 3 months. So the reason I included my blooper reel is that sometimes it was just 100% not my day that day when I was doing the audio recording. When I'm doing a live class, if I stutter or mess up or or something, I can just keep going. But since we did record it and it's meant for when we do get a chance to look at the next video that I have prepared for us, that is the fundamentals of dance that we're hopefully all going to do together. And then it's the precursor to the partner dancing. So like you won't need a partner to do it. You'll just have to first, learn how to like switch your weight and switch it to time. That's being able to do it yourself is the first step before you can do it with somebody else. I think I jumped on a tangent. What I wanted to say is like when we do that video, it'll be a good gauge for the user whether or not they'll need to do that video again over and over and over and over and over again, and they can anticipate that it may take them 5 months to work through all 5 levels, or perhaps they'll do it and think it was the easiest thing in the world, and they know they want to go straight to practicing with their avatars. So they have the flexibility and option to navigate salsa virtual like
that. I'm trying to use Engage now as my daily driver instead of Altspace, because you have that record option. Yeah? And if you play the recording, you can actually see your avatar walking around over there, and you are here as well. Like you see a digital twin of yourself while you are already a digital twin. But you can maybe start doing that on this way, right? If I'm doing single dancing and play back the recording and dance with myself, that will be funny.
The way that Jorge is gonna lead us through the next video, he re-recorded this session for me. The way he did it was he put an extra camera inside of our Unity scene, and so you're watching his avatar, much like you're describing here, and recorded himself. I believe that's just right now on the developer side of things. When we first got into virtual reality, it was still so new that whenever we were testing it with other people, when it was easy for us to navigate all the controls, but for them it was overwhelming. So we tried to make it as simple as possible, point and click and hold hands. I think when we first started, because we were putting people in our demos and people doing VR for the first time, even just navigating the grip buttons versus the trigger buttons, if they weren't already a gamer or familiar with things like that, it took them a while to get used to the remotes.
So the gamers, they are actually your best market. So you are actually practicing now with gamers? Do you have like a community group of gamers that you now actively practice and train with?
Actually, no. So we weren't focused on gamers. Some dance people it's a very passionate topic. People have very strong opinions about it. Some people are like, I already know it's absolutely not for me. Some people are just too afraid to try, and some people are like, yes, turn on the music. Like, I'm ready to boogie. Like you have a lot of different personalities there. So I feel like when we were doing our surveys in the beginning, the people who were used to like sit down games or like Dance Dance Revolution, or like you mentioned, the Xbox Kinetic. Like they were just into like, do something active, do something fun. We were trying to be less of a game and more as like an educational platform. So that's the difference. We were actually trying to reach kind of some of the same people that we were trying to reach for our studio, just but who was still like just not quite ready to walk through the door. They have this other option, very narrow audience.
Yeah, so there's a specific group of people, like the segment that wants the buggy right away, and convincing them to do it in VR is overwhelming. It's easier to convince a gamer with a PlayStation VR. They are using controllers, they're in VR already, but they are not dancers. So it's a different audience. The gamers, they never danced, and now there is the option, and they are not using it probably. And then you want to have like the real dancers and put them into a completely different world. So I think that's the hurdle, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And the gamers also, I know that they are probably used to going and buy, I don't know what it'll translate to euros or what the market is there, but in the United States, they may go pay like $60 for a game. And they had hundreds of people working on it for hundreds of hours. And Jorge and I, we didn't have those resources. We didn't have hundreds of people. I mean, we put hundreds of hours in, but it doesn't look like hundreds of people doing hundreds of hours. So they, some of the feedback that we got from some people was that it still looked, too simple. So the gamers' expectations were much different. Of course, now that we're doing all of our updates, we've taken that feedback and we know how to apply it now. We're making less mistakes as we go along. So yes, I think the gamers, most of the gamers I know, I don't want to put everybody all under one umbrella, but the gamers that I'm familiar with, like my brother-in-law and such, he was very much in this category of, please don't make me do it. I'm terrified of dance. I have 2 left feet. There's just absolutely no way anybody or anything could teach me how to do it. And those are my people to work with, especially in person, because I know they can.
Totally, yeah, totally. I totally get that. So it's a really interesting topic, and I thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on it. And to answer this question, when will VR become mainstream? So virtual sports, and after that, team sports will take over the norm in VR. What is your guess?
Within the decade.
What do you need to make it go faster?
It's got to be easier to use. For example, if I love my mother, but if I asked her to set up the VR headset, I don't think she could do it. And
maybe with the Quest.
I don't.
You haven't tried it, yeah? It's the perfect mom test, eh? Like, that's the best way to sell a product. Give it to your mom and see what she's doing without giving her any instructions.
She was we did. Jorge and I traveled to my mother when we were first putting it all together, and we let her try it.
Yeah.
And wow, that was her first time in VR, and I'm lucky enough that I've been able to see a lot of people's first time in virtual reality. I remember my first time. Wow, she was just impressed being in the steam home. She was like, she was very excited. She's like, look, there's even shadows. I love it. It was not something that she probably ever thought she would see in her lifetime. But now the technology is definitely, sometimes I made AR flashcards for my son that I put on my phone, and so now he's already familiar with technology. So unlike my mom who didn't have that, I'm guessing generously when I say 10 years, or definitely within the next 10 years. I was excited that we're already wireless. As more people put out more wireless headsets, as soon as we get that haptic feedback, as soon as we fine tune it all, I mean that's where it's at. I just get a, maybe connect it to Bluetooth or something, just a couple presses of the button. Right now, I think it's too many what I consider like, step 0.1, step 0.2, step 0.3 before you actually get to step 1 when you're in it and you're doing it. So
I think we have to create like a maturity metric. So we have that one for self-driving cars. Like it's on step 1 or in step 2 or in step 3. We can let the car drive, and step 4 we cannot no longer touch the car anymore, just touch the steering wheel. We need that as well, like the steps towards getting the norm. And then I'm really curious on your take on, like you say, a decade. So in 10 years, like, okay, which steps do we still have to take to make this a norm for your mom? Like that's the norm then, for your mom.
For my mom, it needs to be just almost exactly like her iPhone that she still is. I love it when I call her on FaceTime or something.
Yeah.
I always have that first few minutes where she's flipping the camera back and forth. So, and until it's maybe like put it on, press a button, maybe 2 buttons, that's when I think it's gonna be the norm.
Maybe we have to partner up with Just Dance, and then give that Just Dance experience first to them, and then after that with a headset on in salsa dance training. I think that will be a nice step to get them onboarded.
Yes. I think you're right. Sorry.
Dance is not really going to learn you how to dance very nicely, but it's at least helping gamers to move a bit.
Yeah, it's really just, it's about getting started. Everything, the hardest part of anything is starting it.
Yeah. So I want to thank you, Rebecca. We are right on time, and I really looking forward to have a dancing lesson from you. So I don't have the Vive yet, but I am probably going to borrow it someday from a friend, and then I will try that app out and do one of the lessons. But let me know if there's any way that we can attend these lessons as well on live or on a pre-recorded session on something that you are preparing right now. Please let us know where we can find you so that we can start practicing or start giving it a try and spread the word and get this mainstream.
Yes, thank you. I'll keep you updated. All of our updates right now are going to our website, and from there we could keep in touch.
What is the website actually?
So the website is dance-virtual.com. dancevirtual.com. I also encourage everybody, especially now that we're in COVID and I don't have the same social outlet as I did before, send me an email, talk to me. Let's get the conversation started.
Let's do that. Thank you very much. And I wish you a pleasant day.
Thank you.
See you all. Bye-bye.